A taxi explosion outside a hospital in Liverpool. Counter-terror police are investigating. One person is dead, another seriously injured. Tonight, officers have made 3 arrests. Also ahead. The nation falls silent for Remembrance Sunday, but the Queen is unable to attend because of a back injury. The brothers of Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend, Gillian Maxwell, tell ITV she should be set free from jail. And Lewis Hamilton ignites the Formula One title race with a thrilling win at the Brazilian Grand Prix.
This is ITV News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. It was just a minute before the country was due to fall silent in remembrance when a taxi exploded outside Liverpool Women's Hospital. The passenger in the car was declared dead at the scene. The cab driver was injured and is tonight in hospital recovering from his injuries. With the counter-terrorism officers quickly taking the lead, the investigation appears to be moving quickly. Tonight, officers made 3 arrests after a raid in the Kensington area of Liverpool. Hannah Miller has the latest.
This is believed to be one of the 3 men under arrest under the Terrorism Act tonight, seen in footage obtained by ITV News.
Oh my God, look at this.
Police were responding in the aftermath of this. A car explosion outside Liverpool Women's Hospital that left witnesses visibly distressed. Tonight, the driver of the taxi is in hospital with serious injuries. His passenger died at the scene. One of Europe's leading hospitals caring for women and babies, now the scene of a major investigation. This afternoon, what was left of the burnt-out taxi was cordoned off for forensic teams.
We are keeping an open mind as to what caused the explosion, but given how it has happened and out of caution, counter-terrorism police are leading the investigation, supported by Merseyside Police.
Tonight, on another street just a short distance away from the hospital, armed police continued their raids and people were being stopped from going back into their homes. So far, police have arrested 3 men, aged 29, 26 and 21. The Prime Minister said his thoughts are with all those affected by the awful incident and thanked the emergency services for their response.
Oh my God, look at
They
this.
say they're continuing to work quickly to understand the circumstances of the explosion in a city that hasn't witnessed scenes like this for decades.
Well, Hannah, as you said, events are moving very quickly there. What's the latest you have tonight?
It certainly is a very fast-paced investigation, one that police say is ongoing tonight. There is still disruption to the hospital here and a large police presence. This cordon extends the entire perimeter of the hospital. Staff are being brought in and out with an escort, and ambulances are still coming here for emergencies, but other patients are being directed elsewhere. But as we've seen, the disruption isn't just to the hospital, it's to other locations across the city where residents are really very shocked by what has happened here today. There will be an increased visible police presence across Merseyside, police say, as they try to work out exactly what has happened here today.
All right, Hannah in Liverpool, thank you. 2-minute silence was observed around the country today for Remembrance Sunday. Thousands were able to gather for the first time since 2019 after COVID restrictions stopped last year's events. But the Queen was not among those in attendance. She was forced to miss the service at the cenotaph for just the 6th time with a bad back. The palace insisted it was a separate issue to the problem which forced her to rest recently. Our royal editor, Chris Shipp, has the details.
For the last 4 years, the Prince of Wales has taken his mother's place at the cenotaph, but the Queen has still viewed the service from the balconies above. Today, though, there was a missing figure at the spot where the Queen was supposed to stand. Her cousins, the Duke of Kent and Princess Alexandra, stood without her. Below, Prince Charles looked particularly sombre after he laid the Queen's wreath on her behalf. Less than 2 hours earlier, Buckingham Palace announced the Queen had sprained her back and, with great regret, had been forced to cancel.
Somebody of advancing years, I certainly wouldn't recommend standing for any period of time or sitting for a long period of time, and certainly not standing around in the cold.
Royal sources said the back sprain was not related to her doctor's recent advice to rest, which had already forced her to cancel her attendance at the COP26 summit, where she had to record a video message instead. But it was her firm intention to be at the Remembrance Sunday service today. Even during last year's COVID restrictions, she still managed to pay her respects, like here at the grave of the unknown warrior.
She would wish to lead the nation, paying tribute to all the soldiers and all the armed forces who died, but also I think because she wouldn't wish her absence in any way to detract from this extremely important ceremony, which respects all those soldiers and which is such an important part of national life.
The Queen regards this service, said a palace aide today, as one of the most significant engagements of the year. No one would regret her absence more than the Queen herself. Chris Ship, ITV News.
The Prime Minister has been defending the climate deal signed off late yesterday in Glasgow. Boris Johnson insisted it was an historic agreement that sounded the death knell for coal. Our political correspondent, Romilly Weeks, is here. So, Romilly, what else did the Prime Minister have to say?
Well, plenty, even though he wasn't in Glasgow for the final tense hours of negotiations when, as Alex Sharma revealed today, the deal almost fell apart altogether. Today, the Prime Minister certainly wanted to point up its successes. He called it a game-changing agreement that gives the world a clear roadmap to limiting temperature increases to 1.5 degrees, that overarching goal of COP. He did, however, acknowledge the disappointment felt by many countries about the watering down, China and India's watering down of the language about getting rid of coal. And he can't escape the bald facts that on current pledges, the world is actually on track for temperature increases of more than 2%, which would be catastrophic for some countries. As he said to me, there is a great deal of work still to do.
Romilly, I think it's still very, very difficult. It's still a massive challenge for humanity. As I've told you before, Romilly, I think that the fatal mistake now coming out of COP26, which has unquestionably been a success, the fatal mistake now would be to think that we've in any way cracked this thing.
There is still a year left of the UK's presidency of COP, and if Glasgow was the big, flashy push, then there is now the slow grind of keeping the countries who have committed to their promises and making sure those who haven't stepped up start to do so.
All right, Romilly, thank you. The son and one-time heir apparent of late Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi has announced he's running to become the country's president. Saif al-Islam is still wanted by the International Criminal Court on charges of crimes against humanity following the 2011 uprising. And a nationwide lockdown for unvaccinated people in Austria is starting at midnight tonight. The move prohibits people over 12 who haven't been jabbed from leaving their homes except for essential journeys, including getting vaccinated. Two brothers of Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend, Gillian Maxwell, have spoken out against her detention. The 59-year-old has spent the past 15 months in jail in New York as she awaits the start of a trial for sex trafficking children. A jury will be selected later this week. She has always denied allegations against her and is being supported by her brothers Kevin and Ian. Our US correspondent Emma Murphy reports.
She's been held in a New York prison since July last year. Now, as a judge begins the process of selecting those who will determine Gillian Maxwell's fate.
I just want to go back briefly.
Her family are speaking out, questioning the veracity of her accusers and telling an ITV documentary she's innocent of the sex trafficking charges she faces.
It's crucial that that jury is impartial, because the weight of media writing and documentaries and podcasts have painted my sister as a monster today. She's a cardboard 2-3 degree monster. And this is not the girl that I know.
Gillian Maxwell was arrested in a raid on her American home. She's accused of recruiting teenage girls for her friend Jeffrey Epstein to sexually abuse over a 10-year period. He was found dead in his prison cell. An inquest ruled he'd taken his own life before he could be tried for abusing underage girls. Gillian Maxwell has repeatedly been denied bail.
It's a complete aberration. There's no explanation, credible explanation, for why she wasn't granted bail, given the conditions that were put up.
Prosecutors have argued the 59-year-old is a flight risk. They will tell this New York court that it is she who is on trial, not those who accuse her. It will be for the 12 jurors chosen in the coming days to determine guilt or innocence. Emma Murphy, ITV News.
And finally tonight, Lewis Hamilton carved through the field today to win the Brazilian Grand Prix, despite starting 10th on the grid. Max Verstappen finished second and remains top of the Formula One Drivers' Championship. Hamilton has cut the gap to just 14 points with a race that some believe was among the best in his long career. Chris Scudder was watching.
There was something in the air in Brazil, and not just the jets. Hamilton was flying like never before. Starting from 10th place, the world champion tore through the field. After only 5 laps, he'd moved up to 3rd place, and before long, he was past Perez into 2nd.
And he's done it!
Then it was the classic matchup. Could Hamilton overtake his title rival Max Verstappen? In the struggle, the Dutchman almost pushed Hamilton off the track.
Wide by Verstappen, and Verstappen himself has to go off the track.
That incident is under investigation.
The race director said no investigation was necessary, but Hamilton didn't need it.
Hamilton pulls ahead of Verstappen.
With 12 laps to go, the recovery from the back of the grid in qualifying was complete.
Come home to win.
An incredible victory by 10 seconds, and of all his 101 wins so far, it will go down as one of Hamilton's greatest. The pursuit of a record 8th world title has been well and truly reignited. Chris Scudder, ITV News.
And that's it. The weather is up next, but from everyone here on the Weekend Team, good night.